Good morning. Nope. Good afternoon. I almost said morning. I already messed up. We're 1 second into the show and I already messed up. What a start. Good afternoon, everybody. Monday afternoon here. Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. You're going to be joined by Meghan Angley here in just a second. But I did want to remind you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American. And there's, oh my gosh, what a terrible start is out there. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you lower your interest rate and get a better monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com right now to see how much money they can help you save today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. And before we go any further, before I can mess things up anymore, we got a birthday in the house. We got a 21st birthday for Meghan. Meghan Angley, happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I share a birthday with a lot of people.
3 different people in this office, I discovered.
It's crazy.
But yours is the most important.
No.
And we're happy that, or I'm happy that I get to celebrate it with you, even if just a little bit here at work. So happy birthday, Meghan.
I do love that there's a game on my birthday. I know that maybe is weird. It's technically work, but there's nothing I'd rather be doing than going and covering a game.
Isn't it funny how, like, at a certain point in your life, it's like, oh, for your birthday, here's tickets to a game. Happy birthday. But now, still the same game.
Yeah.
It's just you sit in a different spot.
Yeah. And I can ask questions afterwards. Like, why did you lose on my birthday? Or thank you for winning on my birthday. Why do you love me so much?
Right. I was going to say, I was wondering to see how you were going to spin that one into a question.
I don't love the way that I spun it, but
it worked.
It happened.
You landed the plane. Meghan, what felt maybe like a little bit of a potential for a slow news day, another game day. Suddenly we have a whole lot to go over here today. More developments. I'll refer to it as a development in the Gabe Landeskog journey to returning to play. The Avs, this is the last game of their second to last homestand. One more homestand after this. And then other than that, it's just a couple road series, and then we're into it. We're on to the playoffs. We've gotten some technical amount of clarity on some playoff matchup stuff for the Avs, given the way things shaken out the last couple days. And then am I seeing double within the Avalanche organization, or is that Cale Makar's brother Taylor suddenly joining the depth chart? We're going to get into all of it. You've talked to Taylor recently. You had a great article that was out on Taylor Makar that if you haven't read, head on over to guerrillasports.net. Check out Megan's piece from just a couple weeks ago on Taylor Makar and the breakout season that he had this year at Maine, which helped earn him his ELC. Let's start. I want to work up to that. I want to build up to Taylor. Let's start with this game tonight for the Avs. Like I said, caps off a 4-game homestand. The Avs will head back out on the road, come back for one more spell at home before finishing the season on a California road trip. I guess Meghan, let me just ask you what I was asking a couple folks today in the locker room. Can you believe that we're here?
No, it flew by. There have been past seasons where we hit a point in the season and you feel like you're in the dog days of the regular season, but it almost didn't even happen that way this year. I just feel it flew by. I think because there have been so many high and low points of fluctuation for this team that it has stayed interesting from the start. You know, there have been so many different storylines and redemption arcs and character development plot lines within this season that maybe I stayed engaged the whole time, to where with just 8 games left, I'm surprised how we got to this point in the blink of an eye.
See, now here's the only thing that I disagree with you on what you said there is I did feel like I hit the dog days a bit there, but it was the Four Nations tournament that changed things for me this year.
Interesting.
I felt like, oh man, we're in this, slog part of the season. The break hit And then it was like trade deadline, your team's finalized, home stretch, one more road trip, one more. And it's like, holy shit, how did we end up here so quickly? Because I felt like we were in the doldrums of the season like a week ago. And now suddenly, I was just talking to someone the other night, like, man, we probably need to start looking at flights for Dallas for round one and getting that stuff booked up so that we can be out there for round one. And like very quickly, there's just like not a lot of time until that is coming to pass. And so, just crazy how quickly this all went very suddenly.
Because, what's interesting about what you just said is you're right. In those games leading up to the break, there was this feeling of, oh, we all need this break.
Yes.
In part because the schedule was so loaded up ahead of it that I think players were a little worse for wear as a result. But similarly, the Netchis Rantanen trade had also just happened. So there was this optimism, this glimmer of hope, like, well, what's waiting for us at the end of this break?
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to get from these new players? Are we going to recover from the loss of Mikko Rantanen? And so to have those questions, Chris MacFarland, in addition to these fits being great for the on-ice product, it also helped to distribute the interest across the season to have exciting things at the deadline, but also before it.
Well, and I do wonder a little bit if to your point, like it did very much feel like it was a wind down on, we all need this break. Let's get to the break. The deadline's still a ways out. But then you get this huge trade that happens that kind of felt like it was the shot of energy. But then you hit the break and it was like, oh, okay, no, we did need this. It kind of a false start, on the big trade with Mikko, and thought maybe things were ramping up, but no, it's good to get away. And big spring break vibes on the Four Nations tournament, just because it's been cold and winter and we're in the middle of the season and all that stuff. And suddenly, the sun's out a little bit. We're getting closer to spring. There's hockey that players are skating really hard and all this stuff. So yeah, to your point, the big trade right before the break was also kind of just a different hurdle in this whole season.
Shake up.
And really for the Avs, this season has felt a little bit like two seasons. The team's so different from when you and I were at training camp. And it's just so much has happened, yet it still feels like it's too quick for us to be here.
Yeah. And I think unlike other seasons, because they did tinker so much with this roster around the deadline and ahead of it, of course, it does feel like we haven't seen as much of what this team is capable of together as they are constructed right now in this moment. And there's a lot of curiosity then about what this team can be in the playoffs. And it's why just looking at the strength of play recently, to lose in a disappointing fashion to St. Louis, it's all very interesting. I'm not panicked over the loss to St. Louis, but St. Louis has represented, coming out of the break, a little bit of a problem in how stingy they play hockey. And that is expectation for playoffs, that they're going to be getting every team's best. And so this is exactly the kind of thing they need to be learning right now and gearing up for. And so I hope through the rest of this home stretch that everybody is like a sponge and they're just absorbing all of this information and, of course, trying to find ways to win at all costs. But beyond that, taking in the learning lessons, even a disappointing Toronto loss, a disappointing St. Louis loss, all of it. It's going to be very important here soon.
So you weren't there on Saturday. So I want to unpack a little bit of that game. So you said it was disappointing, but I thought there were a lot of positives to take out of that. Let me just start here, because what you said about the Blues. I saw a lot of sentiment online and even talked to a couple people after the game that were like, oh man, I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. The Blues are just not a scary team to me, Megan. In this current 9-game winning streak, how many of those 9 wins do you think are against playoff teams, knowing that they knocked off the Avs a couple nights ago?
I'm going to go with 4.
2. It's the Avs as the most recent win, and then the winning streak started against the Wild. Otherwise, they beat the Ducks, the Predators 3 times, the Canucks, the Blackhawks, and the Canadiens. As part of this 9-game stretch. I think Jim Montgomery is a fantastic coach, and I think he's very familiar with the Avs and builds really good game plans. I think that's a team that's believing themselves a bit. I think it was good because I think they played a style of hockey that the Avs, to your point, are going to have to play through.
And they just did against LA.
Yep.
So that's what I'm not
right.
panicked.
No. And I think that's just one where you say, tip of the cap. Jordan Binnington played well. The Blues played well. But as Devon Taves told us after the game, the Avs also played well. The Avs also limited chances. Came down to one, squeaker that got by Mackenzie Blackwood that he got plenty of. And that's it. But I look at this St. Louis team. When they lost 5-3 to the Penguins and they were several points outside of the playoffs, nobody was like, oh man, but I'd be worried if they get hot here. They're on a nice little run here. It's likely going to end with them in a playoff spot. They're playing good hockey. But I don't know. I saw a lot of sentiment over the weekend about how suddenly good this Blues team is. And it's like, whoa. This team has spent 85% of the season on the outside looking in. Teams win 9 and 10 games. It happens all the time. It happens multiple times every season. They are just getting their hottest at the most advantageous time of the year.
I feel similarly, for the record. I think crediting them for playing a stingy game, I attribute a lot of that to Montgomery's coaching style, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I do think a new coach surge is to be expected too. And I would like to discuss this on Pucks and Prosecco for pretenders and contenders.
Ooh, nice.
Who are the teams that are actually well constructed that I think have the pieces top to bottom? Because I don't feel that St. Louis is complete. No. I think that they're well-rounded, but I don't think they have enough at the top. And I also don't trust Binnington. I think he's a Jekyll Hyde type of goaltender. The Avs happen to run into him when he's pretty hot, but as we know, this is not an infallible team, right. Just going back to the Cup year. And I think they're a little less complete now than they were then, to be honest with you. That's my perception. But I won't devalue the strength of a good coach. And I think we're seeing the returns on that. I have a lot of, high opinions around what Jim Montgomery can do for a team. But
why?
Do you back in the Frozen Four? And that's the topic of today, and I'm changing it now.
That, They just can't keep themselves out of it.
No, and if you were to hear the way they talked about the regular season that they had, they were pretty hard on themselves. There are moments that they're so unsatisfied with. And I even look within the NCHC tournament, how it started for them against CC. There was definitely disappointment after that game 1. I think it's a mature group. And it's why a lot of these players go on to have pro success, and why I'm so hype around what Zeev Buium will be in the NHL, because his stock has just risen in my eyes. I already felt like he got shafted a little bit at the draft. I expected him to go higher, but there were so many good defensemen in this recent draft. So I guess I also understand it. Sorry, this is becoming a DU hockey pod. Zeev Buium rules. I think it's a shame that he'll pose a problem for the Avs in just the Central Division in the near future with Faber and Buium on that blue line in Minnesota, but I'm excited for it too.
I agree with you on Jim Montgomery. I think I remember the Bruins fired him earlier this season when I was on the road, and I think it happened during a game or during a practice. I was somewhere that Corey Massasak and I were together. And when that came through, I looked at him, I said, they actually did it. They actually fired Jim Montgomery. And he and I were both sitting there saying, I think there's a real argument to be made that the Bruins are only having whatever level of success that they are because their team isn't any good, but they still have Jim Montgomery. So they're still competitive. And we were both just like, there's no way this doesn't only get worse.
everything fell off.
Immediately.
Things were already bad. I understand that. But it led to them dismantling this team and any sense of a core identity that we once knew, because it got so bad after Monty.
Well, and it just seemed to me like that was like, you won a Stanley Cup in 2011 and you're still coasting on that same core. It's about, you're 14 years later. That's a hell of a run. I wouldn't look at this coach that you just brought in within the last couple of years who has helped you exceed expectations. That would have been the person that I would have been protecting at all costs and helping to shape the future of what you were going to do for the Bruins. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Do we have ADHD on this podcast?
Geez.
The answer is yes. Also, someone earlier in the chat, I think, became a new member.
Yes, I made sure to have him up there, but thank you for circling back.
Because there were a lot of happy birthday wishes, so I wanted to thank everybody for the birthday wishes.
Mike Peterson, new member.
Because I've seen Mike Peterson in the chat a lot, so welcome. Yes. You're finally here. We're so excited to have you as a member.
Absolutely. Good call.
He's been tuning in a lot too, so we appreciate all of you regulars that we recognize in the chat each day.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's get back to looking at that playoff picture here. Because it looks pretty much all but sealed up. This tonight for the Calgary Flames taking on the Colorado Avalanche is their last gasp, right? They have 3 games in hand on the St. Louis Blues, but they currently sit 7 points behind. The Calgary Flames cannot lose any more games, honestly. I mean, they've got 10 to go. The Flames probably need to go 8-1-1 if they have any chance of getting in. So you're going to get a real desperate look from them tonight. The Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues are really kind of battling it out for who's going to finish where in the wild card. And then if you look at the Central, the Avs 7-2-1 in their last 10. The Stars 7-1-2 in their last 10. The Jets 7-3-0 in their last 10, despite the Avs playing very good hockey recently. Not only have they not made up any ground, they've actually lost ground on the Dallas Stars. The Stars have a game in hand and are 7 points up on the Avs. So look, this actually reminds me of the Cup year for the Avs 2022. The Avs were so far ahead of the rest of the pack. The Blues and the Wild got like white hot in the last 15 games. Didn't matter. They didn't hardly close any ground on the Avs. Feels like that's what's happening here. I guess there's an outside shot that the Stars could catch the Jets. But I guess, Megan, seeing where all this is shaking out right now, knowing that it is highly, highly likely that it's Stars going on the road, just where are you at with what we're seeing from the Avs here down the stretch? Obviously, we still got 8 games to go, but up to this point, where are you at with how they're playing, how the lineup's coming together?
I feel like a very Jared Bednar response, and I can't pay too much attention to what the Stars and the Jets are doing. It feels like the Avs should just make the push to kind of empty the tank game by game and treat this like a 7-game series every single game, the rest of the way. Playoff style hockey. And it's been a sentiment that they've been talking about now for a little bit. So they've been gearing up for it. But I think it's important for them not to get lax around that mentality and really feel that. And so I don't think they played badly against St. Louis. I think that second period was stingy on both sides of the puck.
It was.
And I think just a tiny bit, a lack of discipline in the third period, made it a little bit hard for them to get a little bit of an advantage in a game where the chances were so hard to come by. And that's the smallest little tweak then when I'm at a point in the season where I'm looking for them to be honing in on those details and kind of striving for perfection in a sense. But it's because I hold them to such a high standard. With what the Jets and Stars are doing at this time of year, everybody's kind of hot at the right time, to include the Avs. So there's a lot of excitement about what this group can do in the first round. But it is important for them to be thinking about it right now, going into a game against a team that they've played well against all season. But you look back at the last Calgary game and there was this feeling of rallying around the depth in the Parker Kelly game that was had, but also I'd like to see Nathan MacKinnon in particular get red hot. I know the Art Ross race doesn't matter that much to him, but Kucherov sneaking into that conversation, it still feels within Nathan MacKinnon's grasp. And I think we're seeing a more balanced team. And so the spotlight isn't on Nathan MacKinnon, maybe for good reason, because they're getting contributions across the lineup in a much more balanced way. But I'd like to see Nathan MacKinnon in this final stretch of games start to look a little scary. He's kind of on a nightly basis always a scary guy,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm looking at pretty closely, especially in a game like tonight. You know, the head-to-head, Nazem Kadri is hot right now as well, 6 goals in his last 5 games. And so I want to see the top of the lineup match up really well against a hungry Calgary team.
One of those other top guys, Cale Makar, 1 goal shy of his career high, 3 goals shy of 30. I know you'd like to see him get there. But yeah, no, I'm with you. You know, look, Nate, we talked about it, I think it was last week, about how his game was so rounded out and complete in 2022 when they won the Stanley Cup. That's what I want to start seeing out of him, is just getting that 200-foot game honed in, and just really start, because, and I also liked what you said there about emptying the tank. The Avs technically have like a bye week.
Yes.
The final week of the season.
Almost 5 full days?
Yes. The Avs, depending on when the playoffs start and when the Avs series starts, there is a chance that the Avs will be resting for 1 full week. The Avs' final game of the season is on April 13th. There is a chance they won't play until April 20th to start the playoffs against Dallas. So there's a chance that they'll have an entire week off. So I'm with you. Empty the tank. Start getting yourself in that playoff mindset, that playoff mentality. I talked to Charlie Coyle about that today, and he said, look, we're not focusing on the standings. We're not staring. I don't even know what the possibilities are right now. If we're locked in or if we can change something, we're focusing on the task at hand. And right now it's Calgary.
We're never losing again.
Right. And so, you know, I think that's the right mentality. Is you want to see them saying, we're focusing on this game, and then we'll go to the next one, and then we're focusing on this, because that's also the mentality that you need over a 7-game playoff series.
It's true. It's a good reset between games with the learning happening along the way. I look at other seasons too, and I almost feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, because you can run the tape. In past seasons, I haven't been worried about the Avs turning it on at the right time, especially the 2022 team. I feel differently about this season, and it's because of the depth. I think they have the depth to empty the tank in the games that remain, because I don't think it's going to cost them in a bad way. You know, I don't think they're playing Nathan MacKinnon ridiculous minutes every night anymore. So I do want to see everybody's individual best, because I do think the minutes are spread out throughout the lineup in a way that I don't think they're going to hurt themselves. This feels like I shouldn't be speaking. Now I feel like I'm cursing them.
No.
But I that's what gives me the confidence to say that they should approach the rest of the games this way. It's because this team is so deep now.
Well, and truthfully, there was and this is not just a sentiment that is exclusive here to this comment, but I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, well, and I was even talking with Evan about this. Like, do they rest anybody in Anaheim for that last game? I have a hard time seeing guys like Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar want to sit out games. And 2, because you have so many days off before the playoffs start, I don't love the concept of sitting a guy. Look, if you want to run Nathan MacKinnon out for 10 minutes, I'm very much fine with that. Don't go get anyone hurt. But I'm with you. I want to see that playoff mentality, that playoff intensity every game the rest of the way. I just do.
Yeah. I'm looking too at the bottom of the lineup is where maybe there's some natural rotation that's already been happening. And with Kiviranta out of the lineup, there's opportunity on that third line to see what it can be, because at this point, Ross Colton and Coyle are kind of anchored together in what they're doing. So I wanted to ask your perspective on what Miles Wood, through that brief stint, was able to do there. How did you feel about this?
Well, I don't think he was able to do much, because it looks like he's coming out tonight for Jimmy VC. And you know, Megan, I I feel not bad, but I think this has been a challenging year for Miles Wood on a lot of fronts. And I think he's dealing with a back injury that is causing him more problems than he expected. And I just think I don't think he ever got settled into this season. Because honestly, Megan, I thought he was a little bit of a mess in these last few games that he drew in. Took penalties, I believe, in both games. Wasn't really dangerous. There was one play in particular that I remember from Saturday where he got it on the forecheck real hard and finished a hit, which is good, but the play kind of went by him and went up ice and didn't really have an impact on the play. And I just think he was a guy who last year, we like to joke and about players being loud. I thought he was a loud player last year, that he made his presence felt. I just haven't really felt that this year. And for a player like him who plays the way he does, he's got to be loud.
I think he's lost a little of his efficacy because he is this chaos machine, all gas, no brakes, at least last season. And you kind of saw the way that was contagious to his teammates. And so him and Ross would feed off of that energy together. But I don't feel that way about the games he has gotten into. And it's why I also support Jared Bednar trying to get him and VC a little bit fresh by getting back into games, because if you kept them out through this point, they would only be sitting on the shelf longer. And I think we'd hate the result even more. But it is at a point where that third line, they paid a premium to put Charlie Coyle there. So you also don't want to waste its potential, and you want to maximize what it can be in the same way that we discovered we loved Kiviranta with Colton and Wood last playoffs.
Well, so let me cut you off here for a second, because that, to me, Megan, that's what I was going to say. That third line with Miles Wood plugged in there, it just wasn't the same. And again, it's not that he's not a high energy guy and he's out there, he's chasing. I don't want to make it sound like Miles Wood is doing nothing of substance out there. He's trying to bring energy. He's trying to throw his body around and hit and things like that. But to your point, that's just not really what that third line is designed for anymore. It's energy, and you want them finishing checks and you want them playing smart defensively. But there's also now with Charlie Coyle, Ross Colton, 16 goals, Yoel Kiviranta, there's some threat to it there, though. And it just feels like for whatever reason, any level of that Miles Wood had last year, it just doesn't have it. And that third line in particular, when they plugged him in there, it just did not feel the same.
No, I see the effort and the intent behind what he's doing.
100%.
But it's like it's the performance of chaos, and it's not actually enacting chaos. And that needs to be, I've used the word suffocating, it needs to be suffocating, and it needs to bait other players into taking the penalties. And so I don't, instead, he's taking the penalties instead of drawing them. And that obviously hurts the team a little bit. And I'm not hammering down on just penalties. It's it's lost how effective it can be. And I also think they're getting Miles Wood-esque traits in other players in this lineup that have stepped up. And it's that entire fourth line that I think is more effectively doing this. And it's, by committee. So it's not like a singular player is the chaos monster that Miles Wood once was, but together it has a similar effect.
100%. And yeah, I do just think that the phrase that we throw around a lot for healthy scratches of odd man out, I do just think that that's what Miles Wood is suffering from more than anything else right now. The line and the identity that he helped make up of that line, like you said, it's kind of been, it's been elevated a bit. And then that fourth line that I think maybe does fit his identity a little bit better. And like I see someone here talking about he's built for the playoffs. I agree with that. I just think that there's 3 or 4 guys right now in line ahead of him that are also built for the playoffs, but have shown. Jack Drury told me today that defensively, Parker Kelly and Logan O'Connor might be the smartest players he's ever played with. That's just not something that we hear a lot of talk about with Miles Wood.
No, and it is pretty unique to those players. So to have them put together, it's a line that doesn't give very much and tries to play a pretty punishing game in the offensive
And
zone.
disciplined.
It's extremely disciplined. I think Drury's learning that on the fly too. Drury's been on the wrong end of some calls himself since coming to Colorado, but I don't view him as an undisciplined player. I view it as a learning curve because he sees the way that Logan O'Connor and Parker Kelly play, and it is a pretty fearless and sacrificing style of hockey, and he's just trying to adopt it too, and I think he is, and it's only going to get better from this point, but it's because he's playing with two really great role models for that style of hockey.
I want to expand a little bit on the conversation around the style of hockey. You mentioned something a minute ago about momentum or playing in the playoffs or something like that. Doesn't matter. I had a really interesting conversation with Eric Johnson this morning about a lot of that and about being able to lean on some of that experience. And I mentioned to him something that you and I have talked about of the Montreal and Dallas games. Like, are those games that you guys can look at and say, okay, it didn't go the way we wanted, but we found a way to get a win, and here's what we can pluck out of it. He expanded on that a bit. He led by saying, well, we don't want to do that. But he did talk about the fact that like there's a lot of experience for a lot of guys who have played in big games and them being able to take chaotic moments and settle things down. He thinks is going to be something that's going to be important for them. And again, not trying to use this as a way to take a side swipe at Miles Wood, but it does just feel like chaos is his game a little bit. And if the Avs have options for players who can play that same style, but a little bit more in control, I think that's what you're looking for with the way that you have this group put together.
Yeah, some channeled chaos. Do you have the Eric Johnson interview?
I do, and I want to use it as a springboard to talk about a little bit of something else as well.
Okay.
I just want to know if you had any other thoughts about just, it's something you and I have talked about of not only did they add talent at this deadline, they added experience. And I do think like those are two positives that I took out of those games where they let leads get away from them quickly is, but you were able to stop the bleeding and get back on your toes.
This is another topic of conversation I kind of want to dive into on Pucks and Prosecco, because I saw somebody going line by line comparing the 2022 team to this team, and I was a little curious about some of them. Some of them are pretty obvious, like not really open for discussion, but even something like JT Compher to Charlie Coyle comp. It was, JT Compher 2022 greater than this year's Charlie Coyle. I don't know if
I don't know that either.
Is as closed discussion as it seems. And it's the experience of Coyle and what he was to Boston versus what Compher has been away from Colorado that makes me curious about what a player like Charlie Coyle can be here. And it's because of his experience. A player who has seen the playoffs every year of his NHL career. That matters.
Mm-hmm.
Competing in those moments and experiencing the losses. We've heard Jared Bednar talk about the importance of building up that scar tissue and referring to it as a source of motivation down the line. I think that players who have played on big stages and have lost matter a lot too. Obviously, you want winners as well, but how players compose themselves in big moments matters. And that's where I think a player like Brock Nelson, just with his age and experience, has maturity to settle tough situations down, can mentally process it a lot quicker and channel that into something productive instead of letting it get out of hand.
Well, and and this was always an argument that I would make in favor of JT Compher. But like he was one of those players that like he could go quiet for a while. And then right when your team needed it the most,
yes,
he was Johnny on the spot, would find a loose puck, put in a rebound, come out of the box and spring himself on a breakaway. Like, he just had the knack for showing up in those moments. So
he did. Very clutch
player for the Avalanche. I think so much so he didn't get enough credit for that here in Colorado. But my point is I can understand someone's thought process on that. Like, oh, JT Compher is better than Charlie Coyle. We remember the big goals and the big moments. I think you're right, though, Megan, in that, whoa, hold on. Let's pause on this for a second. Let's give Charlie Coyle the opportunity to get himself in some of those moments for the Avs and see what he can do. I think I'd probably, if I'm taking, what they've done in games in those type, scoring a big goal, if I'm taking that out of it, I think I probably would take Charlie Coyle over JT Comfort just in a standard, pick one of these two players. But I think it's an interesting, point you make of like, hold on, let's not be so quick to anoint this when we haven't seen Charlie Coyle get the opportunity to show up in a clutch moment like that as a depth scorer. Let's wait it out a minute here.
I think line by line, there's some more conversations around what some of these players can be in Colorado because they're here newly. And I really value the experience that some of the new guys have brought.
Totally. Let's hear from Erik Johnson, and then I want to use this as a way to put a bow on the conversation we're currently having and springboard us into talking a little bit about maybe someone else who could be a boost in that bottom six. This time of year, Jared's talked a lot about how everything has to be ramped up, details, intensity, all of that. What is it that you can bring, and how much do you lean on that experience from a couple of years ago going through a deep run, like you guys did?
Yeah, I think experience is huge. We have an experienced team top to bottom. Most of our guys have played in some huge games, and I think it's something you can lean on. I mean, especially when the atmosphere gets cranked up in away buildings, I think that's when you can really settle things down, and I think it makes a difference, and hopefully I can lend a helping hand in that regard. So, lots of big game players in here with lots of experience. That definitely helps.
So you had the game against Dallas and the game against Montreal where you guys had leads and let it slip away, but you find a way to win. Is that something that you can lean on in a month when, hey, even when things start to slide the other way, we know how to stop the bleeding and get back on our toes?
I think for us, we don't want it to happen, but it's not necessarily a thing that's bad for your team to go through. I think it's not always perfect throughout a season. It's not always perfect throughout the playoffs. There's going to be momentum and emotional swings throughout every game and every series. So you'd like every game to be smooth sailing and hold a 3-1, 3-2 lead or 4-0 lead, but it's not always going to be the case. Teams are going to make their push, and teams are going to, there's always comebacks. So I don't think it's something that we liked that happened, but I don't think it's a bad thing for your group to go through because eventually those things are going to happen throughout the course of a series. And I just think overall our details need to be better in those situations. I think we had little lapses in our game that caused the other team to get back into it. And for me, it was just puck decisions. Make the simple play when you have the lead. We don't need to make the perfect play. Use our speed and get the puck out when we have the chance, and don't give them any freebies like we did in those games.
You were leaning on Gabe a bit out there on some of that special teams work. Not to go too far into it, but just from your perspective, how is he looking in terms of starting to inch his way back towards game readiness?
Yeah, he didn't have a red jersey on, so I was free to give him as many cross checks as I would have liked. So I only gave him one or two, but he handled them fine. And there's going to be rust for sure whenever he comes back, and I think it's just going to be a matter of him working his way back into it. And these are important steps in that process, and I think as much real-time game uncertainty action his knee and body can get, I think is going to be a good benefit to him, and we're not going to crank on him too hard, but I think he wants to feel that pressure a little bit, and it was nice to give him a little bit of that today. I know he's excited to be out there, and we get a huge boost when he's out there.
Regardless of whatever happens next with him, how proud are you of him for going through everything he's gone through and still continuing to be here to push?
Big time. He could have sailed off into the sunset and called it a career and collected his paycheck for the next 5 years and wiped his hands and been a legend in this organization. He still is, whether he comes back or not, but he wanted to see this thing through, and got to give him credit. No one's done it, but at some point every surgery that's been attempted was the first time for that surgery. So hopefully he's spearheading a procedure that a lot of kids and players will use in the future, and see that Gabe Landeskog could come back from this, and so can I. And proud of him because I know he's put so much time and money and resources, and it's the mental grind on him has been a lot, just as much as the physical grind. So I know he desperately wants to get back and is doing everything in his power to do that. And like I said, he didn't have to go through all this to try and come back. He doesn't owe anyone anything, and for him to put his body through this and try and come back to help this team is pretty special, and it'll be a great boost when he's back.
Thanks so much, EJ.
Thank you.
All right. As I'm still echoing here myself. Erik Johnson, it's great to have him back in the room. My goodness. A lot to unpack there, but he talks about, hey, we've got big game players. We've got players who have been here before. And it just feels like there's a confidence in that room and a trust and a belief in each other. It's just refreshing to hear. Before we get to the Gabe comments, any thoughts on what we heard from EJ there?
Not.
So you can also say no. That's fine.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot here. All right. Let's talk about number 92. Back out there today, and Megan, in my opinion, what I'm going to refer to as a step was taken today for Gabe Landeskog. He was out there running through special teams work. Nathan McKinnon was not on the ice. He takes maintenance days frequently for morning skate. And so they were down a player for special teams. And instead of having Sam Malinsky fill in or stuff like that, like we have seen them do in the past, Gabe Landeskog back in his office, playing in front of the net and below the goal line. This feels like a step to me.
It is a huge step. There are, to your point, different ways they could have filled in that top unit and maybe even had Landeskog on the second, but getting him those reps with the players on the top unit feels a little significant, and just the elevation, the escalation of it being a player that's kind of been in some practices and some morning skate, going through drills with the depth players, now putting in some reps with the top guys on the top unit. We talked about the building blocks that were necessary, and we're still going through them. Like, this is one of the building blocks. The next is starting to wear a little bit of contact in practice. And so that's a huge one that we're still waiting to see, but it's forward movement and it's progress. And I'm not going to undersell that either.
Well, and you know, Megan, I don't think I'm going to call it contact necessarily. But he was definitely, for the first time today, you know, you heard me ask EJ about it. Guys were leaning on him. And, you know, I'm trying to get it queued up here really fast, but behind the net, he was using his body to shield the puck. And Eric Johnson gave him a few, you know, and again, he wasn't like burying him, but it's, you know, he's pushing him. Can you stay on balance? You know, Sam Girard chasing behind the net, and Gabe's, you know, kind of did a stop, change directions. And it's just those types of things where I felt like for the first real time today, we saw him in a game-like situation. It's not a game. It is nowhere near the same as a game. But for the first time, it was unpredictability. And like you said, not just going through drills and taking, you know, catching a pass funny. No, he did not know what the defenders were going to do. He didn't know where people were going to move. He didn't know where his lanes were going to be. And I just love the fact that, because that was part of the question with, well, when he comes back, is he going to want to go back to the front of the net where he's kind of made his career? And it was the first place that he went today, as we have those images here of him running through some drills to start. But then as soon as special teams work broke out, I said, I wonder what he's going to do, because no one else went to put on a blue jersey. And he went right back to the front of the net. And that in and of itself, Megan, showing not afraid to get back there and compete, I think is something else that you can take some positivity from.
Yeah, I really like what you're describing in the play below the goal line. It's a dangerous area of the ice, and it's going to be a big curiosity.
Right there, stopping, starting.
The mobility aspect of it is where there's concern. And he looks to be moving better and better.
And right here is where you can see EJ1 gave him 2 shots there, swipes at the puck. And I mean, like, just the way he's cutting back and trying to get to the front of the net. And like I said, was EJ, you know, leaning on him, trying to bury him? No, of course not. But it's the fact that, hey, you weren't expecting someone to push on you there, and you did, and you were able to wear the pressure and maintain control of the puck and, you know, make an outlet pass out of it. Small little baby steps. But to me, that has got to be one of the more encouraging developments that we've seen. Now, again, we got to see what happens here next and how does his knee feel and all that. But it wasn't just drills. That was, you know, as close to live ammo as you can get.
the thing I've been 50-50 on with Landeskog, the possibility of a return, is whether or not he would get that look back on the power play.
Yep.
And one reason for it would be the ability to shelter a little bit of those minutes, that those shifts. They feel, putting in quotes, safer to me and easier to manage than the grind of 5v5 play. Like if he is returning to a third line that battles and has to muck it up a little bit sometimes, those can maybe be some tough shifts that add up at the end of a night. But if you're managing his minutes and the opportunities that he's given, limit a little bit of that play and then put him in power play situations, it might be a really good way to ease him back into gameplay.
Yep.
In a sheltered way. And I think he can still help a power play.
Yeah.
That's just how highly I think of Gabriel Landeskog.
Well, and here's what's fun about this. I think he could be a major difference maker on PP2. But what I love about this look right here, if they were to go with it, you got Val Nichushkin and Gabe Landeskog parked in front of the net. You've got layered screening on that power play if you chose to go with something like that. But I'm with you. I think he's a guy that, like you said, third, fourth line minutes, get him out there in front of the net on PP2. Whatever you think, but it's the randomness to how he was moving today that I think is something that you have to take some encouragement out of. And again, it's the fact that he's willing to jump in and do that stuff. He does not look hesitant out there. That I think is encouraging.
Yeah, it's starting to resemble gameplay more and more. Nothing can replicate it completely in practice. Right. That's a very important note, but it is important for it to start looking more and more like game action, more situations that he would encounter in game. And we're seeing it with the drills ramping up and now some special teams work.
The Avs don't have any room to activate him before the end of the season. There's always been some chatter about, do you send him on a conditioning stint? I believe he gets 3 games without having to be like officially activated off of LTIR if the Avs wanted to go that route. I think, I've heard people give pushback of, no, you'd have guys going for him. I don't think there's anybody in the American Hockey League that would make a point out of trying to target Gabe Landeskog on a conditioning stint like that. I feel like would be a really good way to, get you put, on a blacklist or something like that.
It's reputational suicide.
Right. So that doesn't concern me. And like, truthfully, I am kind of at the point where it's like, well, if you're worried about him going back into that game, then he's probably not game ready. I don't know. I don't think that they're going to send him to Loveland to play in any games. Crazier things have happened. But I don't know if Gabe Landeskog comes back to the playoffs. I really don't. I'm 100% positive that he's going to give every last thing he has to try to make that happen.
Yeah. I don't see I was kind of split on the LTIR conditioning stint too. I'm still pretty torn, not sure.
Yep.
I don't think it's quite the wild, wild west in the American League the way that people think it is.
Or that it used to be, at least.
That it used to be. Certainly not. It's still very odd hockey with weird flow, but I don't think it would be as dangerous as people think. The sport of hockey in general is dangerous. That is where I just feel concerned generally about Landeskog's return to play, because as we're talking, even the contact that he might wear in practice a little bit, it's just not going to be quite what he'll get in game with opponents battling opposite him. And so that will be something that until that day comes, we don't really know how he's going to handle it.
Right. As
much as they try to replicate it. But we're still in this forward moving process of seeing him take baby steps forward. And I don't know, you have to sit and appreciate that a little bit too.
Totally.
There's been so much uncertainty and false starts with Landeskog where you do see a couple things and then he's off the ice for a little bit of time. And it's just continued to be consistent practices and baby steps forward. And it's awesome.
It's awesome to see. And for him, the person, you'd love to see him make it back. We don't know if he'll be going to Loveland on a conditioning stint. We do know of at least one other player who will be heading to Loveland soon. But before we get to that, Megan, today is a special day. Not only is it your birthday, it's a great anniversary. Do you know what today is the anniversary of?
Is it the Nathan MacKinnon?
It sure is. It sure is. 4 years ago today, Nathan MacKinnon received a 10-minute misconduct for tossing Connor Garland's helmet at him in a fight. Scrum after the whistle. Who knew you had such a special birthday?
I share a birthday with Sean Barons, Kiefer Sherwood. There's a few other random hockey players. And also the anniversary of Nathan MacKinnon going crazy.
It's one of my all-time favorite Nathan MacKinnon highlights, which really says something because Nathan MacKinnon has a hell of a highlight reel. And you can just tell that him and Connor Garland do not like each other every time you watch that video. And watching him so casually toss that helmet at him and then approach him with kind of like a hit me, bro mentality just brings a smile to my face every time.
It's also Gordie Howe's birthday, who I share a birthday
really?
with. And I just wonder if he was taken over by the spirit of Gordie Howe in that moment.
He might have been. But Gabriel Landeskog, like we said, maybe heading to Loveland. Might get a conditioning stint. Taylor Makar, definitely heading to Loveland. Will finish out the season with the Colorado Eagles. Megan, the Makar brothers are officially both members of the Colorado Avalanche organization. Taylor Makar, his season at Maine ended over the weekend, last week. And he has signed his entry-level deal, which will kick in next year. It's a 1-year entry-level deal kicking in at the start of the 25-26 season for Taylor Makar, but he is joining the Eagles for the rest of the way on an ATO. How big of an ad is this for the Eagles, or is this a situation where Taylor will get up there, get some reps, but will be doing a lot of watching and learning? What do you think happens here?
I think a lot of watching and learning, and it feels like a seniority thing, to be honest with you. They're even struggling to grapple with the veteran rule as it stands. So good players are sitting out some nights up in Loveland. And similarly, at least in a Cronin era, I'm more familiar with the utilization of the NCAA players. And in the same way that young players need to earn a lot of trust with Bednar before they get consistent opportunity, I feel similarly about opportunity for these college guys. You know, the Malinskys were a little bit different. I think Poland plugged in really quick too. And so that's where I have some confidence that Makar, a mature player, a little bit older, you know, not a true senior graduating college, will get some opportunity, but it's going to have to be earned. He's going to have to make a case for himself, earning those reps more than the other guys who've been here all year, because this is a team that has been playing extremely well. So Taylor Makar has to separate and make a case for how he can help this team that's already cooking right now. And I'm excited for it because I think he adds something a little bit different to the depth with the Eagles in how powerful he is. And I also think this is a really special day because I don't know that we viewed him as a real prospect when he was drafted. You know, those early development camps, it was too soon to tell anything, but we weren't encouraged.
No.
And one of the things that I thought was a weakness of his game was his skating. It is now a strength. And the growth that he has experienced as a player throughout his college career is tremendous. So there is a strong skater with incredible speed and a lot of power behind what he does. He's a big player that I think can add something a little different than to the depth for the Eagles.
6'4", listed at 209. That's a big boy, Megan. Just 24 years old. Had his best collegiate year this season, picking up 18 goals, 12 helpers in 38 games for the University of Maine Black Bears. Like you said, 24, so he's not a traditional rookie, you know, coming in. Let's go back to the skating, because that is something that I remember so clearly. That first camp he came to, I was like, this is Cale's brother? Like, have you just not been paying attention every time your brother's gone out and gotten on the ice? And
that's mean.
Well, but to your point, and I mean, like, let's just be honest here. At least for me.
I have a lot of notes.
Yeah.
That I've never shared that will never see the light of day that were not very high on Taylor Makar.
I mean, look, it very much felt like, especially with where the Abs were picking when they took him in 2021. I remember, and especially after seeing him at that first camp, thinking like, oh, that was nice of them to do. They did a favor for the Makars and got to draft his brother. And like, that's a cool moment, good for them. Megan, this is a legitimate prospect now. He has taken the last 4 years and grown his game a lot. I'm going to stop just shy of saying this is a legitimate NHL, upside guy.
Right.
But this is a player that if he showed up and had an impact on the Eagles' playoff run, wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think that he is more ready to plug in and play than other players coming straight from college. And I look at the leadership value he added to Maine and the way in which he really focused on developing pro habits over this last year in preparation for this very moment. And so, similar to what you just said, I have not really set any sort of ceiling for what Taylor Makar can be because of how much he's surprised me over these last 4 years. The first two, like, he had an incredible sophomore year, but his freshman junior seasons were a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. And so to have such a breakout senior season is encouraging, but it's always come down to, I need to see him at the pro level, because there's a lot of guys who come from juniors or come from college, and it's just a different speed. It's a different pace, and I need to see how he fits. I'm excited. That's sort of the last piece then for me to start projecting what he could be at the next level. And I just need to see it first. But I agree. I think he can help the Eagles. He's coming into a pretty stacked team, so it's competitive right now. But there's a lot of opportunity for him, especially like looking ahead into next year when I'll have a full season of runway ahead. But he was the lone goal scorer in the losing game. I think this is a player that, talking about maturity, can handle those types of moments with grace. And I'm excited to see then, with the Eagles looking at a serious playoff run, what he can add to the locker room in that sense.
Right. Well, and like, we've talked to him a few times. He seems like a great kid.
Oh my God. They're just a good family.
Right. And that's where I was going with it, is like, he's a Makar. It's a lot of the same traits and qualities and work ethic and all that stuff. Do you know what player I've got pulled up on my screen right now, Megan?
Logan O'Connor.
Logan O'Connor. That was a good guess. To me, this is who he needs to, starting, not even really starting a year ago, starting right now. Taylor Makar needs to try to be emulating Logan O'Connor as much as possible. To me, that's his path to the NHL. Can you be a guy who just works harder than everyone else on the ice? And I think Taylor Makar has shown over the last couple of seasons that he's willing to do that, even transferring from UMass to Maine. And Maine has a good program. Maine's always had a good program, but UMass was kind of looked at, they were a little bit better. They've won a national championship in the last couple of years. This was, his brother's Kale. His brother built UMass back up. And so I think him saying, no, I'm willing to go somewhere else where my last name isn't plastered all over the halls, and put in the work to make a program that people are looking at as me maybe taking a step back and making them just as good and helping make them just effective and lifting them up. And what does he end up doing? Nothing, just scoring 2 goals in the Hockey East Championship to help Maine capture that. Like you said, scores the only goal for Maine in the tournament on, en route to them getting eliminated. Like, he went and put in the work, and you could see the results directly reflected in his, in his box score at the end of the season. But if he can come in and just start and put on his best Logan O'Connor costume and just take that work ethic, that drive, that mentality, those habits, I think Taylor Makar is going to give himself a chance to be looking at some NHL time at some point in the next few years, but there's still a lot of work for him to do.
I think the power behind his build alongside the work can make him very difficult to play against. And that's the next level is I think the physicality ramps up in the American Hockey League, unlike what he's experienced in college so far. And I think that can be an aspect of his game that he is more of a threat, and it will probably take some adjustment too. And seeing the difference that Andrew Cogliano has made, not only in the prospect pipeline with the direct one-on work he's been doing, but in Parker Kelly's season.
Yeah.
The fact that Parker Kelly has become so effective for the Avs, working closely with Andrew Cogliano, I'm also confident that Taylor Makar is in very good hands, having this direct line of communication to friend Andrew Cogliano, friend of Cale Makar. I think that similar to following in Logan O'Connor's footsteps, he has a terrific role model and all the best insight in the world from another player that he should seek to emulate.
Well, and you know, you were mentioning earlier that you've been waiting to see Taylor Makar at the pro level because there are some guys' games that are better suited in the same way that we've talked about before. As backwards as it sounds, there's some guys who are better suited for the NHL than they are the AHL. There's some guys that are better suited for pro hockey than they are collegiate or whatever. And again, just looking at Logan O'Connor, his most productive season ever at any level of hockey, Megan, was his rookie year in the American Hockey League. He scored 19 goals, had 42 points. Was never a big producer at the college level. His game clicked in the American Hockey League. I think the way that Taylor Makar plays, his size, his skating ability, his ability to put the puck in the net, if you can combine the tools with the work ethic and the habits and working with Andrew Cogliano and emulating Logan O'Connor, I think that's where I see a path for him. If he can get in and his game can pop at the pro level offensively and he can combine it with all that other stuff, he's going to give himself a chance.
I look at, how sad it was we weren't able to see Cal Ritchie in the American Hockey League because of how much that would have benefited his development, because Logan O'Connor credits the veterans in the league that helped him to be the player that he is today, like having Andrew Agozzino on the team with him, his rookie season with the Eagles. And so Taylor Makar is going to have the knowledge and experience of Jason Megna, Jacob McDonald, TJ Tynan, Matthew Phillips. And I know maybe that isn't instilling a lot of anything in anyone, but that matters because those are players who have been around the pro game now for some time, and they have been on the journey of trying to cross that boundary of American League to NHL and have done it. Right. Exactly. That experience and leaning on those players and seeing what they do, it's just the next level of learning that needs to happen for a player like Taylor Makar. And it helped Logan O'Connor.
Right. Here's something interesting. Cooper Gay is another player that the Eagles signed last week that we haven't really talked. And there was a goalie as well, correct?
Yeah.
Do you remember the name?
No.
Me either. Damn it. I was hoping you had it. This is just interesting. Elite Prospects has Taylor Makar listed at 6'4", 209. Elite Prospects also has Cooper Gay listed at 6'4", 209. Shout out to Vaguely for that pull right there. But
Isaac Posh.
Just anecdotally, that is kind of funny.
Isaac Posh. Let's see. 6'3", 209.
Shut up. Seriously?
No, not kidding.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's pretty crazy. So 3 players added for the Eagles in the last week, all weigh 209 pounds and are about 6'4"-ish.
About 6'4", yeah. My favorite thing, especially in college bios, is where a player from freshman to sophomore year shrinks an inch. Like, something happened here.
Have you ever stood next to Alex Kerfoot?
No.
He was listed at 5'11" when the Avs signed him. And I will never forget that first camp. It's like he wasn't any further than 5 feet from the boards, like stepping onto the ice. It's like, that guy is not. If he's 5'11", so am I. And it is just always funny how these.
Yeah, there's definitely there's different measurements. I don't know. I don't even know how tall I am at this point. It's given me a lot of uncertainty.
Anything else for today, Megan?
No, I'm excited for both the Makars and the organization. I think it's a special day for this family because it was never guaranteed that
No.
this path to the pros would unfold like this. So it's pretty exciting for them.
Fun stuff. That's going to do it. Regular game night content coming your way tonight. If you want to get caught up from everything we did this morning at Morning Skate, head on over to Gorilla Sports. Check out Charlie Coyle, Eric Johnson, Logan. Nope. We got Logan O'Connor on the brain. Jack Drury, Jared Bednar. Talked to all of them this morning. So make sure you guys go check that out. And then we'll have everything coming your way tonight as normal. Pucks and Prosecco. A Chloe-less Pucks and Prosecco episode coming tomorrow. And that's going to do it. Happy birthday, Megan.
Thank you so much.
We love you. Happy birthday. Mark behind the glass today. Make sure you guys can see us and hear us. Doing great work as always. And hey, shout out Chloe while she's gone, I guess.
Chloe.
That's going to do it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching.
Bye.